So moving on, I'm going to start to talk about my project work that I did at my internship. I'm going to pass around something. This is my project proposal, which I'm going to explain in right now. So you know how like the Met is like one student at a time? That's really what Montessori is like. And so I had a shadow day at Montessori. If you didn't go to my last exhibition, I told you about it, but I'll tell you again. My last one, I went to a Montessori, 2 Montessoris, and it was really quiet when I walked in, which is a really big difference from my internship at Carl G. Loro. And so I got to see the students working with all the different manipulatives that they used, and I didn't know what they were. And so as much as I wanted to intern with different students and learn more about education, I was like, wow, this is like a really cool like place, and I want to learn more about it. So I did a research paper, which I'll get more into in a minute, like after. And with that research paper being done, I realized that I really wanted to benefit the students at my internship that I got at Carl G. Loro again. So therefore, I made manipulatives, which I don't have with me because I donated them to the classroom that I worked with. So they have them, they use them. But I have more pictures that I'll show you in a minute, and you can kind of see them with that paper that I passed around. So after I made the manipulatives, which I made them through materials that I would just find around my house, materials that I got from the recycling center when I went with my mentor, things that my LTI donated to me and let me use. I just basically got things from like everywhere and made a bunch of manipulatives. And so after I made the manipulatives, I realized that all of the students that I worked with were all at different grade levels, and that the manipulative wouldn't necessarily work for every student. So after that being said, I went along and with this paper that I'm passing out, you can see the manipulative name is at the top, so like it'll say L-Conan word strips, and then I have beginner level, intermediate level, and advanced level so that they could build upon their knowledge. So I'm basically saying everything on this slide. So another thing that you'll see is on my Gateway contract was to make them long-lasting, because the projects that I made there last year, the students, like, eventually it got worn out and it ended up getting destroyed. So I wanted to make these manipulatives as long-lasting as possible because I really think they were going to benefit the students. So I did. I got everything laminated right at the e-center, so that's that. You'll see in a minute. Any questions about the general overview? I'm going to get more into detail. So steps to making the manipulatives. Oops. So this is basically where like all of my thought process goes into. So this is, I passed out this paper. That's all the literacy manipulatives from Montessori, and I talked about like how I'm going to use them in the classroom. This is basically a brief description of each one and what they're meant to do. This one is the paper that I passed out for the instructions to like the beginner, intermediate, and advanced. I made a list of all the materials that I needed to gather up to create the manipulatives. This was the math ones, and a link to it was a YouTube video of a bunch of them, and I wrote the link of where that one would be so I could go back and reference to it. This is the official pre and post test data sheet. That's what I was trying to think of. And I just completed the post test yesterday, so we'll get more into those. And those were the pre and post test manipulative like tests that I had to create. There was a lot of creativity in this. And then this was which student would be using which one and why. So that's what this like folder of all my thought process is looking like. Okay, so bringing it to my LTI. So when I was bringing it to my internship, it was relatively complicated because the students have a very set schedule, and to interfere with their schedule is very hard. So I had to slowly work it in and talk to the students, be like, hey, do you want to do something really fun? I know you do. So then they would come to my table if they were getting like stressed or something, and we would start using the manipulatives, which were genuinely fun for them to use. So that's how I started getting them to use it, and then I had a set schedule every Wednesday when I was in that classroom. I would have them use it right after lunch or right before, depending on who's there and like how the classroom's working out. So current use, as I said, I donated it to the internship for them to keep using. and outcome, we're going to get to that. You emailed it to me, right? Yeah. Right, yeah. So, me and Becky made this. Oh my goodness. So it looks like this. And it says what they scored on the pre-test and what they scored on the post-test for literacy and for math. And then I put it into these graphs to see if they actually worked. And so as you can see, all of my manipulatives worked for every single student. Some of them tested out as 100, so they moved on to like the next level from that intermediate to advanced. And then some of them it didn't work, so they had to bump it down, go back to beginner. So all of the manipulatives worked for every single student, which I'm very proud of. And then literacy, a lot of them were very strong in literacy. So some of them tested out at 100 in the beginning and then 100 in the end, but they just kept building on their knowledge with the advanced one. So, but some of them were still low, so I wanted to give all the students a chance. But as you can see, like, the students had way less math skills than they had literacy skills. So those are what the graphs look like. Anything about the graphs?
After you collected that data and sort of organized it, did you see any areas in which you would have changed the manipulatives? So did it help inform your...
Yes. So
if you did it again?
When I noticed that the literacy was at 100 from the beginning, I wish that I created more challenging literacy manipulatives because I wasn't aware that the students were like that high in literacy versus math. So if I could go back and change it, I would have created more literacy manipulatives, Montessori manipulatives that is, to like create harder ones and ones that they could reflect on, ones that they could learn from like more deep. So yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So, this is just a picture of me working with one of the students using the manipulatives, and this is what the paper looked like when they're done. So this was one of the manipulatives, bead counting, and so each little like pipe cleaner would have a different amount of beads. And the reason I used a pipe cleaner and beads is because the students really like sensory things, so it was really fun for them to use genuinely because it's like you could feel it. And then they would use these plus, minus, and equal signs, which were also like cube-like, so they could feel it, and it was more like fun for them to use. And then after they wrote it out like that, they would write it out in their own writing. So this was just one of the students' works that genuinely liked my manipulatives.